Hello lovely people and happy April. I'm starting this vlog with a trip that I took last month in March to North Berwick. A friend and I visited the Scottish Seabird Centre, which is a place that inspires people to care for our marine environment. Their vision is to ensure that Scotland's marine environment is healthy, wildlife rich, valued and enjoyed by all. We also attended an outdoor sketching class with the Edinburgh sketcher and we sketched a variety of things, but I most enjoyed sketching shells and Bass Rock. Bass Rock is home to the world's largest northern gannet colony, and 3 years ago I was lucky enough to go on a boat trip to see it up close and can highly recommend it if you're in the area. At the start of April, I took a trip with my family who were visiting to Aberdour Castle. In a previous vlog, I walked around the castle's beautiful walled gardens, but this time I got to explore the tiered gardens behind the castle. The gardens, which were one of the most lavish in Scotland at the time, were created by the Earl of Morton in the 16th century and consisted of a stone ducat and formal Italian-inspired terraces leading down to an orchard and the River Dower. The Garden Information Board states that in the 70s and 80s, archaeologists rediscovered the terraces. It says they found pollen grains from several plants, including water lilies, suggesting there may have been a pond here. Since then, the structure of the terraces has been restored, beehives have been placed in the orchard, and more fruit trees have been planted. I read elsewhere that in the future the original terrace planting and pond plants might get reinstated, which would be brilliant as they would bring much more biodiversity to the grass-laid terraces. I'll keep an eye out for any future news on that. And if it happens, I'll definitely come back for a visit to explore what they've created. As you'll see in a minute, the leaves are just starting to unfurl on the fruit trees, and I'm happy to report that now at the end of April, as I put this vlog together, the blossom on the fruit trees around here have arrived and it's made me so happy. Since the start of April, we've had a few blue sky days here in Edinburgh, but it's still quite chilly. I layered up and went to explore a garden in the city centre, which I've only just discovered. It's called the Archivist's Garden and it sits between General Register House, which is one of 4 repositories for National Archives of Scotland, and New Register House, in which statutory registers are maintained. These records hold the history of Scotland, and this is what inspired the planting in this garden. The 57 plant species used all link to Scottish history and culture, The plants belong to at least one of 7 headings of birth, marriage, homecoming, heraldry, tartans and tweeds, famous Scots and death. For example, this canary bird rose represents Dr. L.C. Inglis, a famous Scottish surgeon and reformer. The yellow rose was a symbol of the suffrage movement in the USA, and Inglis contributed to the foundation of the Scottish Suffrage Federation. Some other plants and trees used in the garden include apple, pear, almond and rowan trees, daffodils, bell heather, iris, bear's breeches, foxglove and thistles. There is a ton of information about the garden and the relevance of the plants used in it on the National Records of Scotland website. So if you're interested in garden history or learning about plants in general or Scottish history, this is an amazing resource. The sweeping lines in which the plants were arranged is based on the pattern of a brain and was chosen as the concept of the garden is all about collecting memories, and so the layout is based on the organ where this occurs. There is an excellent video of the garden on YouTube with the creators of the garden being interviewed, and it shows a bird's eye view of the garden where you can get a much better idea of the sweeping lines and waves they've created with the planting. If you leave the Archivist's garden and head east along Princes Street, you'll reach Calton Hill. Calton Hill is an extinct volcano and in 1724 was established as Edinburgh's first public park and one of the first in the whole of Britain. The information board states that in 1775 the first path was constructed around the hill for the pleasure and amusement and health of the inhabitants of this crowded city. There are many monuments and viewpoints on the hill, and some of these include the Dugald Stewart Monument, Nelson Monument, National Monument, Parliament Cairn, a Portuguese cannon, a trig point, and the Collective, a contemporary art centre housed in a historic observatory. The Friends of Calton Hill were established last year to make the hill a cleaner, safer and more beautiful place. They organise meetings, walks and events relating to geology, archaeology, history and biodiversity and arrange regular litter pickups, the most recent being on the 13th of April. In terms of biodiversity, the Friends Group organised a series of reports to determine the bird life, insect life and plant life living on the hill. Within the 10 hectares of grassland, bareland, rocky outcrops and broadleaf woodlands, they found a variety of life, including the meadow froghopper, wool butterfly, 5 species of ladybirds, a peregrine falcon, wrens, siskins, horse chestnuts, foxglove and hawthorn. This is one of the many viewpoints from Calton Hill. Here we can see down into Princes Street, over to the castle, the Pentland Hills, and one of Edinburgh's other extinct volcanoes, Arthur's Seat. This is the Nelson Monument and was built as a tribute to Admiral Lord Nelson, who died at the Battle of Trafalgar during the Napoleonic Wars in 1805. The design was appropriately modelled on an upturned telescope, and since 1852 it has become an important building for timekeeping in the city and at sea, with a ball dropping from the top of the monument at 1 p.m. This walled area contains contemporary art spaces and a shop within observatory buildings, a fancy restaurant with incredible views called The Lookout, and Observatory House, which is a very cool and quirky holiday home. Free exhibitions run in the City Dome and change throughout the year. Opposite this building is a stunningly vibrant berberis shrub, just coming into flower. I also spotted tons of gorse on the hill, and not only is it so cheerful with its bright yellow flowers, but it has a gorgeous coconutty smell too. This is another gallery space, and ahead is the Lookout restaurant. The observatory area has a beautiful planting scheme which looks amazing in the summer and autumn and is definitely worth a look if you're in the area. They've planted red valerian, which I have in my garden and is great as it has nectar-rich flowers and attracts the brilliant hummingbird moth, which I was lucky enough to have visit us. And you can see the photos I took on my Wren in the Wild Instagram if you like. The bluebells are starting to come out here in Scotland, and I was chuffed to see my first ones on Calton Hill. They are a true sign of spring and it's so nice to see them. These communal seating areas are actually an installation by sculpture and performance artist Tessa Lynch and are called turns. They sit next to the observatory apartments, which can be rented as a holiday home. The main observatory looks out over the Firth of Forth and houses a lovely little artsy shop inside. Let's go and look at the trig point. So I did a little bit of research about trig points, and the metal plate that's on the side is called a trig point flush bracket, and the OSBM stands for Ordnance Survey Benchmark. And basically the top of the three-pronged arrow is the actual registered height with Ordnance Survey of the trig point, and the code is a ledger reference for Ordnance Survey to identify the trig point. It's not the actual height of the trig point itself. In the distance is the National Monument of Scotland, which was built as a tribute to the Scottish soldiers who died in the Napoleonic Wars. It's associated with Edinburgh being called the Athens of the North, as its architectural style was likened to the Parthenon in Athens. It's also called a national disgrace as it was half finished, as the full funding wasn't reached. I feel like it still has charm though, even if it's only half complete. These 5 trees seem to be memorial trees planted in memory of a young lady called Iona. They will add a lot of beauty and interest to the hillside, and seeing them there makes me feel like it'd be even better if more were added to create a mini woodland which could become a place of shelter and reflection. Looking down into the city from this side of the hill, it's great to see a couple of buildings with lots of roof spaces filled with greenery, plus a beautiful blossom tree. The iconic monument ahead is the Dugald Stewart Monument, which is a memorial to the 18th century Scottish philosopher Dugald Stewart. This rocky wall on the way down from Calton Hill towards Princes Street caught my eye with its bright yellow and red wallflowers. I hope you enjoyed our little jaunts around North Berwick, Aberdour Castle Gardens, the Archivist's Garden and Calton Hill, and I'll see you in the next vlog.